Now we get to have a little fun with some baseball history. We'll do a top 10 list, but for the divisional era, that's our theme this year. 1969, when the divisional play started in baseball, to the present, just over 50 years. Bob Costas is with us. And Bob, this is kind of the example of where it gets more interesting, where obviously Mantle and Mays, you can see they're behind you. They would be at the top of any list, but 1969 on, nope, time to look at a brand new group of players of the last two generations.
Yeah, and in this category, BK, and especially in some others that are upcoming, there's overlap where all-time great players had the bulk of their greatest seasons prior to 1969, but played into the divisional era. And in some cases, you might include them because there's enough quality there. In other cases, you might leave them out. So Willie Mays did play 69 through 73, but he wasn't really Willie Mays at that point. So it's easy enough to leave him off.
Okay, give us your top 10 in center field.
You know, when I first sat down to do this, BK, I thought for sure it's Ken Griffey Jr. But then as I looked at it, I had to put Mike Trout first, Ken Griffey Jr. second, Jim Edmonds, remarkable glove man in center field, covered all kinds of ground, spectacular player, lots of power. Kirby Puckett fourth, Dale Murphy not in the Hall of Fame, should be at his peak, was in the discussion among the best players in the game. The same thing is true of my sixth center fielder, one of the most underappreciated players of my lifetime, Fred Lynn. There was a time where, like with Don Mattingly, you could make a case that he was the best player in the game. With the glove, with the bat, lots of injuries, which suppressed his career totals, but he was a splendid player. Andrew Jones, very high peak. Overall, after the peak, he comes down a little bit. He does have the 10 Gold Gloves. He's seventh. Kenny Lofton, one of the most dynamic players of his era. He was just a guy who could change a game. I loved Kenny Lofton. Carlos Beltran, ninth. Bernie Williams, 10th. In a close call for me, I hated to leave Andrew McCutchen off, but I had to. There weren't 11 spots.
Amazing. So our top 10 is the same. We have the same 10 players. And by the way, we did know, Bob and I, sure. I mean, we communicated, we texted, but we did not say, hey, give me your list. What are you thinking? We wanted to stay clear of each other, and we came at this independently. But we do have some differences, Bob. Here's my top 10. Trout is number 1. Ken Griffey Jr. is 2. Then I changed from you a little bit. Carlos Beltran had a marvelous career and was a 5-tool player. I have him up at number 3. Bernie Williams, I think, is vastly underrated. I have him at number 4. He was also a winner. Winning championships matter. All those great totals he put up in the postseason, those count. Oh, he had more chances. Yes, he did, and he made the most of them and won all those championships. I'm with you on Jim Edmonds. Now, you have him 3rd. I have him 5th. I think Edmonds is a Hall of Famer. I think Dale Murphy is a Hall of Famer. Dale Murphy's peak has him at number 6 for me. I thought I had him kind of high. I was making a bold statement. Clearly, I'm not. You had him up there, too. Then Kirby Puckett, who is also a Hall of Famer. He was a great volume player and a force of nature. Andrew Jones, great glove. Obviously, Kenny Lofton, I think he's a Hall of Famer. One of the top WAR totals at the position in the history of the game, a top 10er. And I'm with you on Fred Lynn, although you can zing me back now, Bob, because I really thought, boy, I love Fred Lynn, and I love Dale Murphy, and I love Jim Edmonds, but you love them more, obviously. Like, you have Edmonds 3rd, you have Lynn 6th, so I like them, you love them.
Yeah, I'm trying to give Fred Lynn a little bit of a boost, especially because I just think he's overlooked too often. But what's really of interest to me is at the top here, Ken Griffey Jr. made the All-Century team in 1999. Now, maybe some people would have quibbled about Barry Bonds, and it might have been an issue of popularity because there was a fan vote involved. But I was also on the panel that tweaked that list, and I had no problem with Ken Griffey Jr. So I'm surprised that 2 decades later, I could put anybody above him. But even when you look at it, Mike Trout has been around for roughly a decade. Ken Griffey Jr. had all-time great seasons for the first dozen seasons of his career, then tapered off a little bit. When you compare to that point, no matter how you slice it, OPS, OPS plus, all the factors, you have to give the edge to Trout, and I find that astounding. Now, over the course of their full careers, Ken Griffey Jr. had 630 home runs. Mike Trout has less than half of that at this point. Maybe 10 years from now we'll reconsider it, but for now, in a razor-thin decision, I go Trout over Griffey.
Yeah, Trout is doing Griffey's best season again and again and again, and actually a little better. I think he's clear-cut. I wondered, I didn't know where you'd have Dale Murphy, because Dale Murphy is getting kind of lost to history. Didn't make the Hall of Fame, but remember, in the run-up to that great year, I think he was going to be in that first year. I think he was in the first year with Nolan Ryan, Robin Yount, George Brett. And leading up to it, it was also a thought that Dale Murphy was part of that class. Now, he didn't make it, but in the years preceding, it was thought that Murphy was part of that all-time great class, and I think he deserves to get in.
Yeah. Well, you know, this will come up with some of the other lists down the road. It doesn't necessarily mean, when you say the following, that that player should be in the Hall of Fame, but it is something to consider. Don Mattingly, Dave Parker, Fred Lynn, Dale Murphy, at one time or another, we're not talking about one season, for a handful of seasons, they were in the argument as who is the best player in baseball right now. The truth is, more than half of the Hall of Famers, you can't say that about them. Right. They may be Hall of Famers, and rightly so, but there was never a time when someone said, this is the best player in the game. They did say that about Lynn and about Murphy.
Absolutely. You're right. That's being more of a peak Hall of Fame voter. And if we were devising the Hall of Fame, sitting around the Otis saga in the 1930s, that would have been fun, by the way, we may have said, what do we want in a Hall of Famer? We want the guys who were the best players. Doesn't have to be 10, 12 years. You're right. Best player in the league for 2, 3 years. Mattingly, Murphy, right? Those are the peak players, and I agree with you, Bob. Bob, we'll have you back then. This is going so well. Thank you so much. We'll do it again.
Oh, good. Good. I passed the audition. Look forward to it.